G'day, I'm Paul. Well, look, it is finally here, the all-new Toyota LandCruiser. I have been seriously excited to drive this, not so much because, it's a new car, but because this is a seriously important car, especially here in Australia. Punters buy so many of these, and I'm really keen to see whether they've improved all of the flaws of the last generation. This competes with things like the big Range Rover, the Nissan Patrol, and the Land Rover Defender. This one right here is the VX, so it's about midway up the LandCruiser range. Pricing kicks off at just under $90,000 for the entire LandCruiser range. The VX is around that $115,000 mark. Today we're going to do a detailed review of this car. If you do want to skip ahead to other parts of the review, you can use those time codes up on the screen, or if you're on YouTube, scroll down and use the chapters below. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon, because that's going to tell you every single time we review one of these big new beasts. Now, before I run you through the exterior, I just wanted to give a really big shout out to Werribee Toyota. The media cars were in another state, and because of COVID travel restrictions and all the other stuff that's going on in Australia at the moment, we couldn't get our hands on a press car. So these guys were able to help us out with a loan. If you want to see more about them and check out their dealership, go to the link in the description. So what about the exterior? You've got 8 external colors to pick from, and there's a few different designs down the front here, depending on which grade you select. If you go for the GR Sport, for example, it comes with a sporty front end, whereas this VX is middle of the pack. It's kind of the luxury version, so you can see it's got all of these chrome highlights, a big old Toyota logo there that doubles as a radar, camera for the 360 camera just there, and stacks of air intake. So you can see this giant one here. Off to the side there, I can see another cooling unit, and then one more off to the side here as well. It's a fairly beastie setup, and you can see that they've established this front end to be capable of taking hybridization. We've seen the hybrid version of the Tundra released in the States, and I think that will eventually filter down here to the LandCruiser as well. I think the design is nice. It's taken a step forward, hasn't really completely changed what this car's about, and I think it was important for Toyota not to do that, because this car has a lot of heritage and buyers kind of just want the same thing but better, and they've kind of delivered that with the design. It's the same thing but better. Up here you've got a set of bi-LED headlights with an LED daytime running light. Also here, headlight washer. Now you may not think that's overly important, but for a four-wheel drive it is important, because if you do sort of some decent off-roading, a bit of mudslinging, you'll find that you can get muddy water come through the bottoms here and along the top, and it makes those headlights dirty. Headlight washer just blasts that stuff away, so it's not too much of a drama. Fog lights down the bottom, and if we whip around to the side, 18-inch alloy wheels with all-terrain tyres, so this is important. Again, if you are doing any sort of off-roading, you really should be preferencing an all-terrain tyre as opposed to a highway terrain tyre. We'll have to see what this is like out on the road. I don't know whether this is going to affect us in terms of road noise and the type of experience you're going to get out there, because the tread pattern isn't conducive to being quiet, so we'll see what happens there. Wheel design is just sort of fairly standard. It's like a brushed chrome look to it. Brakes are bigger now, so the rotor is 354 millimeters. It comes with 4-piston calipers. Important because this weighs around 2.5 tons. You want to be able to pull this up. Around the back, they're around that 330 mil mark with a single piston floating caliper. This gets a standard suspension setup, but as you work your way through the rest of the LandCruiser range, you'll find things like adaptive suspension and also an EKDSS, which is the kinetic dynamic suspension system that has been featured previously on Prado and LandCruiser as well. No big plastic wheel arch protectors, which is good news. Over on the side here, you have an indicator built into that wing mirror. You have a camera nestled in down the bottom there, plus an LED light that'll project out onto the floor. The side steps make it easier to get in and out of, because it is a fair old leap up from terra firma. You've got these chrome strips around the windows, roof rails, privacy glass, and then come around to the back. Again, around here, you'll notice the styling hasn't changed hugely. It is only a minor change, but it is quite a nice minor change. So they've integrated LED tail lamps into here, some cool sort of aero flicks on the side there. This feels to me like it's flatter at the back. I don't know, I had memories of the 200 series sort of sitting inwards a little bit, and that could be due to this tailgate change. It's no longer a split tailgate, so it's just a single piece unit now. The other news as well that's changed with this is the entire range is delivered with a wiring harness ready for towing package, so it means you don't need to faff about with all that stuff if you do decide to eventually fit a tow bar to your car. Big LandCruiser lettering along the back here, along with another Toyota logo as well. So overall, what do you reckon about the design? I think it looks really good. This spec is probably a little bit subdued. I'm really keen to drive the GR Sport, so I can't wait to get behind the wheel of that and see what that's like. There are big hardware changes as you move through the range as well, so I'll be keen to see how all of that evolves, but let me know what you think here about the design of the VX and the 300 series in general. So we are inside the LandCruiser now. Let's kick off with the key. Here it is. So you've got lock, unlock. There's a panic button, Toyota logo, this garnish around the bottom, and then on the back you have LandCruiser proximity sensing key, so leave that in your pocket, and then once you're inside, the push button start is all the way up here. So this is a big departure from the last one in terms of presentation. I think they've really stepped it up a notch to make this look and feel a whole lot more premium, especially when you consider the price. So it has gone up in price, and that means it's now competing with different subset of vehicles, and they really had to focus on making this feel like it's valued a whole lot more than something like a Patrol, which is the same size but looks completely different inside but is much cheaper. And that means everything from the switchgear here with these metallic finishes to even the buttons on the steering wheel with the metallic finishes down the bottom. This is very BMW-like, and it just means that you feel a bit better about paying this kind of money. And have a look at this. It is open pore wood, so a big departure from like the old school wood grain you see in stuff like the Prados. So quite like what they've done there, and barely any piano black, which is great news. And that follows on to these material selections. So really soft along there where you're going to rest your knee, including the dashboard and stuff. And what about your touch points? Well, that is soft. That is where you're going to be resting your arm while you're driving. Same with this one over here. How soft is it? Well, we've got our gyrometer. We've tested the main surfaces in this cabin. If you want to see how this car compares to others that we've tested before, have a look at the link in the description. Build quality, what's that like? This feels fantastic. This is as solid as an Audi. I think Audi is like my benchmark for build quality. It is just, this feels like it's built like a tank, and it could sort of go anywhere without falling apart. And final build quality check, or thing that we kind of bundle in with build quality, door noise. Yeah, that sounds good. Very meaty and European. Moving on to infotainment, there is a big new infotainment system here, 12.3 inches in size, and it sits atop the dashboard there. I think this looks really good. It really suits this interior, and the entry-level models come with a smaller infotainment system, but I think this looks fantastic in the higher end models. You've got shortcut buttons down the bottom here, but it is primarily driven as a touchscreen or with shortcut buttons on the steering wheel. You can see on the left or the right, if you press this button here, it switches between either side. You can select shortcuts for the climate, and then you can also control the third and fourth zones of the climate through here. You can also do your heated seats, music, and then all your stats and information. What you can also do is go to a menu, which is where you'll see all of your other controls. In terms of audio, you have AM, FM, DAB+, digital radio. That's all sent through a 10-speaker sound system. Really good sound system, so big plus on that. And then in terms of smartphone mirroring, you have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Both of those are wired, so I'll show you what CarPlay looks like. It's a bit strange that it sits over onto the side and it doesn't take up the whole screen. So even if you click these buttons to try and minimize things, it actually just moves it to other sides. It doesn't really sort of make this bigger, which is disappointing, but it is a fairly quick integration. It's kind of a tiny bit laggy there, but for the most part, it does an okay job. Unfortunately, something is going on with our Android phone, and Android Auto is not working, so I can't show you what that looks like. One thing I did notice here that I don't love is there's no knob for the volume. You have to use these buttons or the steering wheel, so yeah, let's just go back to the knobs, guys. There is one screen ahead of the driver as well, so this presents all of your trip computer information, a lot of the off-road information, and I'll run you through the off-road information when we go for a drive, but really good setup, so you really just have access to everything that you need without having to take your eyes off the road, and it's easy to use as well, so you don't need a rocket science degree to figure out how to switch off lane departure warning, for example. What about safety technology? Well, you've got autonomous emergency braking that uses both radar and camera. It has pedestrian and cyclist detection. You've got blind spot monitoring built into that wing mirror there, auto dimming rear vision mirror, you have rear cross traffic alert, you have a lane departure warning but not a lane keeping assistant because this still uses a hydraulically assisted steering rack, radar cruise control, and you have both front and rear parking sensors and a 360 camera. I'll show you what it looks like. So one push of this button, it comes up. So you actually have this around view camera. It gives you a look at what's around the sides, the front, the back of the car, and then it pulls out and gives you a top-down view as well. There it is there. Kind of pointless, but kind of cool at the same time. Then you also have the ability to just go down from sort of helicopter view. Now I'm going to turn on the car because it beeps at me if I just slot it into reverse. I'm going to put this into reverse so you can see what that looks like. Quality of that camera is excellent, so big step forward there. You get guidelines as well. Plus there's an off-road view as well that we can look at when we do go off-road. And then you can press this button for a slightly wider angle view as well. I forgot to mention as well, Toyota has rolled out a new feature here in LandCruiser. So you have a SIM inside this car that gives you remote connectivity. If you're involved in an accident where you roll over or the airbags deploy, it'll actually call Toyota's safety service and figure out whether you need an ambulance or assistance. And they will also relay your GPS location so your car's easier to find. What you can also do is pull this little flap down and you can manually call SOS there as well if you need to. So pretty cool feature, handy if you're stuck in the middle of nowhere, as long as you have reception, of course. Now let's talk about practicality, and we'll start with connectivity. Down the front here, you have a flap that conceals some of your connectivity options. So you have a USB-C port and a USB-A port along with 12 volt. You can then also put your phone down here onto the wireless charging pad. I do like this because it is a much better system than the 200 series, but I don't love the fact that it's not gripped. So your phone is just gonna kind of move around, and it's really just not a very good setup there. So maybe there is a pad you can get from the dealer or something to stop your phone moving around, but I think that needs a little bit of work. You then can also put your phone here if you want for storage, where you're gonna put your bottles and that kind of thing. So bottle slots into there sort of easily. You have teeth on the side. There is a deeper bottle slot down here. Cool thing is, if you want sort of a deeper one there and not a deep one there, or you just want to have them both the same height, there is actually this little doodad here. You slot that into this side and that allows them to sit at the same height. So pretty good little setup there. This also fits inside the door easily. See how big bottle fits inside the door. Let's give that a shot. No luck. So just enough storage for a small bottle. So center console, this is interesting because it looks like it opens in the center here, but what it does is you can open it from this side or you can open it from this side as well. When it is open, you'll see this sort of coin tray type setup there, and then it's fairly deep with another storage rack down there as well. So nice little setup, and I think in higher end models you actually get a fridge in there as well. You've got a glove box over here. So you open that up, it's fairly decent. I mean, it's not the biggest glove box in the world, but it's going to be big enough to store your odds and ends. And finally, you have a sunglasses holder up the top. Moving on to comfort. So you have 4 zones of climate control. 2 are up the front here, they're automatic. You have heated and cooled seats. The seats, pretty basic design. It's perforated for that cooling. And then the bolsters are sort of big enough to fit most people. I have plenty of room on the sides here, so if you are bigger, don't worry. You have electric seat adjustment for the driver, so you can go forwards, backwards, move that backrest. You can also move the bolster as required. Electric adjustment for the passenger seat. In addition to that, you also have electric steering adjustment. And then what about our reach test? Well, all of this stuff is easy to reach. It's just these edges of the touchscreen are a little trickier to reach from the driver's seat. Second row of the LandCruiser. Let's start off with room. So knee room is great. Toe room, surprisingly, is really poor. So I've got this narrow envelope there where I can put my toes, and then they're kind of just wedged into position. I was expecting to have a whole lot more sort of toe room there, which is a little bit disappointing. Headroom is not too bad. What other creature comforts have you got? Well, you've got map pockets in the back of these seats. You've got 2 USB-C charging ports, 1 12-volt outlet. This is where your 3rd and 4th zones of climate control are. You've got air vents here, plus air vents in the roof to keep you nice and cool. Grab handles for getting in and out. I like also that you can open the glove box from here using the rear button, so that's a good setup. Bottle holder, you've got a center armrest here with 2 cup holders, so it'll fit into there easily. You can also fit this bottle inside the door without any dramas at all. And you also have ISOFIX points for your 2 outboard seats. So 3rd row, what's it like? It's a big old LandCruiser. The wheelbase is still the same, but they reckon they've increased track and made more room inside. So let's put that theory to the test. To get into the 3rd row, you pull this lever, drops that out of the way. You then manually lift the seat up like that. You pull this base section out and then you lift that into position. I will climb on in. All right, and I'll bring that down as well. Igor, can you just give me a hand pulling that section up? Yeah, just pull that, yep, perfect. Okay, so we're in position now, and I can tell you, there is not much room back here, and this is pretty surprising. The other downside is the 2nd row doesn't slide forwards and backwards, which means you can't really give yourself any more room unless your 2nd row tilts the back of their seats forward. My head is well and truly inside the sort of ceiling of this, and I have no toe room, no knee room. It is really disappointing, actually. I'm surprised by that. But if you put the room to one side, you have 2 USB-C ports either side, and also bottle holders. Keep in mind as well, I'm obviously not built like Arnold Schwarzenegger circa Terminator 2, but I think that this really is just a kid's zone, and I find that quite surprising given that this is, you know, the biggest vehicle that Toyota makes. You can't actually fit an adult in here at all. So yeah, surprising. Let's have a look at how much room there is behind the third row. Now, before I show you the space behind the third row, you've got a full-size spare beneath here. Can't open the glass. It is just one single tailgate piece, and it is manual here on the VX. You can get power tailgate on other models. So here behind the third row, you have just under 200 litres of cargo space. Before I show you what it looks like with the bags in there, you have a power socket just off to the side here, LED lights. Over here, you have the fuses and relays for the car. And then on the other side, it's all about the jack hidden in behind there. Now I'll show you what it looks like with our bags. I left the suitcase at home accidentally, so there it is. This bag is around the size of a carry-on luggage bag for the aeroplane. Remember those things? So that kind of fits in neatly behind the third row. So you do actually have some usable space there. So to drop the third row, again, it's not exactly the smartest system in the world. You have to pull that to drop the headrest. Then you pull this, and then it folds out of the way. That expands the space to 1,000 litres. Got some hooks there as well if you do need them. Then if you want to go even bigger, you can drop the second row as well. That is all manual from the sides. So we pop that down, do the same to the other side. And that gives you about 2,000 litres of cargo space. It is a massive boot. So we have hit the road in the big 300 series LandCruiser. Let's start off with the changes to the engine. So this is a brand new platform. It's on Toyota's new TNGA platform, and it's the first body-on-frame version of that platform. And they've swapped out the V8 diesel with a controversial V6 diesel, but it does produce a decent amount of power and torque. So it produces 227 kilowatts of power and 700 newton meters of torque. That's 27 kilowatts and 50 newton meters more than the outgoing one, even though it is a smaller capacity engine. So they've taken advantage of all the technology to really sort of give this the feel it needs behind the wheel. 10-speed automatic transmission. How does all that feel? I was a little worried because the 10-speed auto in the Ford Ranger can be a little hit and miss. This, on the other hand, my God, they have done a sensational job with this package, even down to the noise. I love the sound. It doesn't sound like the V8, but it's got a grunty note to it, and I think that's really important because if you are going to switch from a V8 to a V6, it still needs to sound good, and this certainly fits that brief. Gearbox is quick enough as well, so even as you're rolling along, you can roll into the throttle and it won't go hunting. It will give you the torque that it needs by leaning on that torque band. It feels very sort of reassuring behind the wheel. This is a full-time four-wheel drive, and this one in particular doesn't have any additional differentials outside of the center diff. But as you move up the LandCruiser range, you have a number of different options. So you can get front and rear diff locks, and also a Torsen limited slip differential at the rear. So that's designed to give you a bit more of a sporty feel behind the wheel without it sort of spinning an inside wheel. Let's talk fuel economy. So the official figure is 8.9 litres per 100 Ks. I'm going to show you the figure here, but let me give you a few caveats. So currently it's 18.7, which is almost 3 times the actual average figure. This car is literally brand new. It's brand spanking new. So it hasn't been run in. There's still a lot of driving that needs to be done before this hits its optimum fuel economy. And on the way here, I was averaging a little over 10 litres per 100 Ks. So I think that figure is highly exaggerated, and if you do drive it sensibly, you're going to be closer to that 10 litres per 100 mark. Keep in mind as well with the fuel economy, the tank is now 110 litres, so that's an 80 litre main tank and a 30 litre sub-tank. Let's talk about drive modes. So this here is the mode select button. This allows you to choose between your off-road modes, but also your on-road modes. So off-road, you hit MTS, on-road, it's just drive mode. Then you flick it around, so you've got eco, normal, and sport. It's all pretty straightforward. The VX here doesn't get adaptive damping, so it doesn't change any of the characteristics of the suspension. Let's talk ride. So the previous gen LandCruiser was not terrible, but it wasn't amazing either. What they've done here though is they've really been able to round out the ride for country roads. Previously with the LandCruiser, it felt a little bit jittery and brittle at times, and yes, you can get adaptive damping on some specs of the new LandCruiser, but this one obviously doesn't have it, and it means that these little road edges here, when you throw a tyre off, really feels nice and predictable. It's very sort of safe feeling behind the wheel. It doesn't feel like it's going to roll over or anything like that. So I think that Toyota's worked really hard to give you a good balance between a comfortable ride and also one that's going to give you confidence behind the wheel. Now that translates through to the safety systems, which I don't know, I kind of find it a bit annoying. Thankfully, you can switch all of them off just using this menu here and while you're driving as well, which is great news. But one of them here is this vibration that it does when the car's leaving the road. It can pulse the brakes as well, but because it is a hydraulic system and not an electrically assisted steering system, it can't actually steer the car for you. So that is going to be one of the downsides of them sticking with that older style of steering setup. Weight comes in at a little over 2,500 kilos here for the VX. It's around 160 kilos less than the outgoing LandCruiser. So it is a big reduction there, about 5. And I think that that really helps with the fuel economy and also giving this a more sort of nimble and agile feel behind the wheel. All right, let's chuck it into sport. We'll see what it's like through our corner here. God, it's got a really punchy engine. It's quite impressive. All right, we'll give this a punt through here. Look, it's not going to sit dead flat. It's no sports car in that sense, but it hoofs along nicely. You're going to be reaching the speed limits here in Australia very quickly. Steering doesn't have a great deal of feel to it. Mid-corner, you can get a bit of kickback through the wheel, so it's not really all that impressive in terms of a handling car. And that's one of the downsides with the hydraulic rack as well. You really can't customize the feel as you go through those drive modes. One of the things I mentioned on handling as well is the center of gravity has been reduced by 6 millimeters. May not sound like much, but that's by moving the engine almost 100 mil back and down. That really sort of makes the car, or the big SUV in this case, hunker down a little bit, and it gives you that impression that it's a little more attached to the road than it used to be. Toyota doesn't have an official 0 to 100 time for the LandCruiser, but we've put it up against our stopwatch, and this is how it went. Here's one thing that I reckon is going to concern Range Rover a little bit. As the price of this has creeped up, Toyota's been sensible with the servicing. It currently has 6 monthly, 10,000 kilometre service intervals, which I think is garbage. They really should be 12 monthly. But they are only $375 a service, and that is significantly cheaper than a lot of the competitors in this segment. In addition to that, if you do service it at Toyota beyond your 5-year mark, they'll actually extend your new car warranty up to 7 years if you keep the scheduled services running. So it is a cheap car to run in that sense. If you are going to be doing a whole lot of driving in it, driving around Australia or something like that, it's not going to cost you an arm and a leg every time you go get it serviced. Now, what about visibility? This thing is a mammoth of a vehicle, but I can clearly see down the front there. The driving position actually feels lower. I feel like I'm sort of more car-like here. I don't feel like I'm towering over everyone. The wing mirrors are really big. It's got blind spot monitors built into those wing mirrors. Visibility out the rear is also excellent too. That envelope is very easy to see out of. Finally, you've got an 11.8 metre turning circle, and that means you're probably going to be doing the occasional 3-point turn because it is a big turning circle. Keep in mind though, when you are off-road, it actually has a turn assist function that I'll run you through that sort of tucks in that turning circle a bit. Okay, time to do a little bit of off-roading, and there's actually quite a bit to get through here, so I'm going to do it in 2 steps. We'll do the whole course in high range first, and then I'll show you some of the extra stuff you can do in low range. The VX here doesn't get any of the KDSS systems, so it's just a standard suspension setup. There's also no front or rear diff locks, but they are available on other models. So let's start off with the specs. So you have an approach angle of 32 degrees. That's the angle of the face you can approach at the front without hitting anything. And then you have a departure angle of 25 degrees, which is the angle at the rear, kind of the same as the front, but in reverse. You have a ground clearance of 235 millimeters. That's an extra 10 millimeters above the 200 series LandCruiser. And you also have a weighting depth of 700 millimeters. In terms of the four-wheel drive equipment, you have a center diff lock as standard. That can be activated in both high range and low range. You have a low range transfer case, and then you have a bunch of these controls here for a bit more finite tuning on the off-road system. So you have multi-terrain select and crawl control as well. Okay, so what we're going to do first, I've left it in high range. We've selected dirt as the setting. What I'll also do is select the downhill assist. So this is basically going to regulate our speed going down this hill. So let's give this a shot. It's all pretty dry today, so I don't see it having too many dramas getting up our log mountain, but we'll see what happens. Oh, this is walking up here without any dramas. I'm just leaning into the throttle, and this 10-speed auto is doing such a good job, just giving me the torque that I need. That is literally a piece of cake. That is so impressive. Okay, so coming down this now, I'm able to use this mode selector here to adjust our speed going down the hill. So I'm going to set it to 4 k's an hour, and it will work in the background to make sure we don't travel too fast down the hill. Here it goes now. So it's falling into the divots there. on our downhill stretch without any dramas. I can hear the traction control system working, and it is doing everything that it needs to do to bring us down this hill. That is really impressive. Okay. Now it's able to control your speed going up the hill again, but that's in low range. So we'll try going up the hill first in high range to see what it's like, and then we'll switch over to low range to have a play with those settings. Okay, let's try this hill again. So it is a steep hill, but what will make the car unstuck is the big ruts that are in it, and I think that will ultimately stop it from moving. But let's see how it goes just in 4 high, just in the dirt setting. So already it's doing a good job getting up here. We're about to fall into our first divot. No dramas at all. There you go, a little bit of a slip there, but it has entirely sorted itself out. I remember when we did that in the Defender, it couldn't quite manage to sort itself out without us going back through some of the settings and locking a differential. So that is really a piece of cake. So, all right, let's try low range now. I'll run you through some of the other features you can actually use while the car is just in low range. Righto, so to activate low range, we have to put it into neutral, flick this switch here down to L4. It switches itself into low range. What I'm also going to do is show you turn assist and crawl control. So to activate that, I'm going to engage the center diff lock. Okay, there it is there. We'll use crawl control to go up this hill. And same story, what we're doing is just using the mode select to adjust the speed. And the car's then going to take care of everything. So it'll do all the accelerating, it will do all the braking that it needs to do. And I love this, the camera that shows you what's going on around the car as we're driving. It's really nice and high res, so there's no confusion about what we're about to attack. Look at that, that is so cool. This is idiot-proof stuff as well. It really just allows a novice like me to get it sorted. Now there is another cool feature here. So what I'll do now is engage turn assist. So one push of this makes the car do some really interesting stuff. So when you have a center diff locked, it's splitting torque between the front and rear axles at 50-50. Now, if that doesn't make any sense, click up here to watch a video where we explain four-wheel drive controls and why four-wheel drives work the way that they do. Well, what it's able to do, normally when you do have a center diff locked, it really increases your turning radius. What this will do on the other hand though, is decrease that turning radius because it's braking the inner wheel, and that causes the car to tuck itself in and allows you to do a tighter turn. So as we come around here, instead of me having to turn wide, you can hear it doing its thing in the background there. And I don't know if we can see that from the outside, but it's braking the wheel to allow the car to do a tighter turn as it goes. It feels weird behind the wheel, but it's meant to be doing all of this stuff to give you that extra maneuverability when you are on tight off-road tracks. And then also the control you have over speed here in low range is excellent. I can't repeat this enough. This seriously is completely idiot-proof. I do love the system that Land Rover uses, terrain response, when it comes to off-roading, but I think this is just even simpler, and it really just gives you everything you need at sort of the push of a couple of buttons. Okay, we're gonna go back up our hill, this time in low range with crawl control active. So I'm gonna let the car do basically everything going up here. So let's see how well that works. We'll just approach the base of it. Again, it's the ruts here that are going to ultimately slow the car down. So that is active, crawl control is on, and it's gonna send us up this hill. Okay, here we go, we're approaching our first rut just here on the left. So the car's just slowly accelerating. As we fall into that rut, I can feel that wheel slipping there. And as we approach this rock here, we'll get the other side slipping. Okay, we're slowing down a bit there. No, that's no drama at all. So look, this is not some serious hardcore off-roading that we're doing here. It's just some basic stuff, but I think for a lot of punters, this is what they're going to be doing. They're not going to be climbing Mount Everest in their stock Land Cruiser, and I think it's important to note that if you did modify this, you could seriously go anywhere with it. It has all the hardware that it needs to get you to where you need to go, and all you need to do then is just specify it with off-road tires and perhaps a lift kit, and you can really just go anywhere with it. Okay, next up, it is our flex test. They reckon they've made the body more rigid, but let's see exactly whether that's worked or not. So I'm gonna leave this all in high range. I'll just pop this in mud so you can see there, a couple of the traction control lights have come on, and we will just chuck it into here. We'll see how it goes. God, this bit always freaks me out. You can actually see the inclination there as we drive through this. All right, perfect. Here we go to the center section. I'm gonna get one of those wheels off the ground. This has a heap of wheel articulation, so we may not actually get to the point where we have wheels off the ground, but that's pretty close. So let's see how that goes. No dramas, that is opening and closing without any problems at all. So big tick there on body rigidity. And we'll pilot on through here to the other side where we can test how much traction you actually have when this is just in high range without the center diff locked. So again, I don't know if we'll get the wheel entirely off the ground, but we'll get as close as we can. There it is there, so it's about off the ground. I'll just ease off the throttle. We'll just see if it can sort itself out here. And then easing onto it, a little bit more. Piece of cake, the traction control system in this just sees that walk through with real ease. The wheel articulation is so big that it still has that little bit of traction in the mud there, but for the most part, the traction control system is just biting at it, allowing the rest of the wheels that actually have traction to pull it through without any dramas. So look, this really does feel like the king off-road, and I'm sure that you can sort of go to some extreme off-roading stuff where you'll unearth some of its flaws, but for the average person like me or you, this is probably going to take you anywhere you need to go. Look, if there are any negatives, the only stuff I will point out is that I would have loved to see a rear diff lock available. You have to go to crazy high in the LandCruiser range to actually get the rear diff lock, but it also does come with the front diff lock as well, so you do get that full package. It'd just be nice to see something like that available here in the mid-spec as well. So the Toyota LandCruiser, what do I think? I am bloody impressed. They've taken the 200 series, which was, you know, a capable SUV, but starting to feel incredibly dated. And they've updated it without going over the top with styling and just giving it all the stuff that it doesn't need. And I think this VX really hits the sweet spot in terms of pricing. It has gone up in price, but it feels like it's justified. All of the extra gear that you're getting makes you feel better about forking out the cash. I will also say with the diesel, the V6, it's really not bad. I thought it was going to be a big step back from the V8 diesel, but it complements the gearbox nicely. It's really punchy, and I'm confident that when you do put a 3.5 ton load behind this, and we haven't tested this, but it will feel capable enough to do that trek around Australia if you needed to. So today was just a brief drive of the 300 series. I'm keen for your feedback though. Which other models do you want us to review? Do you want us to do the entry level, or do you want us to go all the way to the top, or in between? I'm driven by your feedback, so let me know in the comments section which other vehicles we should review from the 300 series range, and we'll get those in and do more of a longer drive so I can give you a better opinion. In terms of the negatives, I did mention when we were doing the off-roading, I would like to see the option of a rear diff lock, or even the ability to tick a box to give us the front and rear diff locks as well. Not that it's not capable off-road, I just think that if you found yourself in a bit of a bind and you really needed a rear diff lock, this absolutely doesn't have it, and you've got to spend even more money to get that technology, even though it should be kind of standard on a 300 series as well. The infotainment system is good, but again, with Toyota stuff, it feels like they've got like 70% of the way there with it and just kind of given up a little bit. But outside of that, I think it is, I don't know, it's just a really big leap forward. And if you are waiting for one of these, I know there is a huge waiting list, you are going to be mighty impressed when it finally does arrive. So if you did enjoy this video, please make sure you share it and like it. I'm sure your mates all want to see it. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon so you can find out every single time we publish a new video. But until next time, stay safe, take it easy.